Come on, get your cockles. Je voudrais. Yeah, what's that? Les petits manger. Breakfast, is it? Deux billets. 2 tickets, s'il vous plaît. Anytime, governor. Come again. Down and out in Paris and London. The podcast. It's good that the theme tune's not getting too tiresome, isn't it? I mean, some theme tunes would get really boring by now, especially with such frequency, with such short episodes. But luckily not that one. So that's something to be grateful for, isn't it? Okay, chapter 10 then. We're going to look at... there's a fair bit to say on this one, actually, I think. Actually, not masses, but anyway. It starts off with anadiplosis. It picks up on the Hotel X at the end of chapter 9. Not directly, I mean, it's not the last word of the sentence in chapter 9, but it is the focus of the last sentence in chapter 9, and then clearly it's the topic sentence for chapter 10. So it's anadiplosis across the chapters there, I would say. And what that does is it gives that sense of narrative progression. We know now we're moving into that new section of Hotel X, or should I say Hotel X, and the fact that both of them are working there. So it's things are looking up for them. Things have become more positive, and we're ready for it. It's been a period of difficulty and desperation, and now these things seem to be on the rise. So a sense of narrative tension as well. You can see, well, unlike Thunder, who sequence things in a certain way for choice, I think this is far more chronological because it has to be. So this isn't necessarily as honed and crafted as Thunder's. It just is how things happened. So it's not that he's arranged the chapters in this way because he wants to create artificial dramatic tension or narrative tension. It just is how it happened. And it's a good thing it did, otherwise it would have been starved to death. So we needed some good luck. And here we have that with Hotel X.
The Hotel X was a vast, grandiose place with a classical facade, and at one side a little dark doorway like a rat hole, which was the service entrance.
Look at that, a bit more zoomorphism then. So, we'll see this again, but time and time we've got things about the people who work there, the place itself being animalistic, and here the doorway is like a rat hole, so it's zoomorphic description of even the building is described in a zoomorphic way.
I arrived at 6:45 in the morning. A stream of men with greasy trousers were hurrying in and being checked by a doorkeeper who sat in a tiny office. I waited, and presently the chef de personnel, a sort of assistant manager, arrived and began to question me. He was an Italian, with a round, pale face, haggard from overwork. He asked whether I was an experienced dishwasher, and I said that I was. He glanced at my hands and saw that I was lying, but on hearing that I was an Englishman, he changed his tone and engaged me. "We have been looking for someone to practice our English on," he said. "Our clients are all Americans, and the only English we know is—" He repeated something that little boys write on the walls in London. "You may be useful. Come downstairs." He led me down a winding staircase into a narrow passage deep underground, and so low that I had to stoop in places. It was stiflingly hot and very dark, with only dim yellow bulbs several yards apart. There seemed to be miles of dark labyrinthine passages, actually I suppose a few 100 yards in all, that reminded one queerly of the lower decks of a liner. There were the same heat and cramped space and warm reek of food, and a humming, whirring noise. It came from the kitchen furnaces, just like the whir of engines. We passed doorways which let out sometimes a shouting of oaths, sometimes the red glare of a fire, once a shuddering draught from an ice chamber. As we went along, something struck me violently in the back. It was a 100-pound block of ice, carried by a blue-aproned porter. After him came a boy with a great slab of veal on his shoulder, his cheek pressed into the damp, spongy flesh. They shoved me aside with a cry of "Range-toi, idiot!" and rushed on. On the wall, under one of the lights, someone had written in a very neat hand, "Sooner will you find a cloudless sky in winter than a woman at the Hotel X who has her maidenhead." It seemed a queer sort of place.
It does indeed, and just look at the semantic field there. You've got this almost, it reminds you of Dante's Seventh Circle of Hell, It's a very demonic, hellish image, the way it's described, very figuratively. So from the stiflingly hot and dark, the dim bulbs, the labyrinthine passages, like the lower decks of a liner, the warm reek of food, the engine noises, the shouting of oaths, the red glare of a fire, particularly that one. So you've got this, and also, of course, the behaviour of the violence down there, and the pushing his face into the damp, spongy flesh of the uncooked meat, and then the references to sort of the graffiti on the wall as well, with the sexual connotation. So it's described as almost like a hellish place, and that is Orwell, isn't it? That's not, he becomes more used to it, and he realizes that's the norm for Parisian hotels and Parisian restaurants. But in that first encounter, it's like going down into the very bowels of hell itself.
One of the passages branched off into a laundry, where an old skull-faced woman gave me a blue apron and a pile of dishcloths.
Just thinking back to that last point I made, it might be worth comparing that with the description of what was it called in Fundos, at the television museum, where she goes and watches the videotapes. That's sort of described in a labyrinthine way as well. Not quite as hellish, but it's similarly alienating and sort of unsettling. Anyway, we've got another character here, an old skull-faced woman. Wow. More unflattering compliments, or unflattering descriptions rather, not compliments, crikey. Descriptions. Chromomorphic description there, so chromomorphism or chromomorphic description. Someone has been described as being a corpse-like figure, skull-faced woman. So just to spell that again, CHREMAMORPHISM, chromomorphism.
Then the chef du personnel took me to a tiny underground den, a cellar, below a cellar as it were, where there were a sink and some gas ovens. It was too low for me to stand quite upright, and the temperature was perhaps 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The chef de personnel explained that my job was to fetch meals for the higher hotel employees, who fed in a small dining room above, clean their room, and wash their crockery. When he had gone, a waiter, another Italian, thrust a fierce fuzzy head into the doorway and looked down at me.
Not as uncomplimentary, but the fierce fuzzy head, the fricatives there to sort of present this person. I'm not sure what the effect is. I'm not sure what effect it has on you, but there's something about the fricatives that emphasise the fuzziness of his face. I don't know what it means. Fuzzy hair, fuzzy beard. It's just a sort of comic caricature description, not unlike Funder's description at times. So well worth adding to your I Spy book of unflattering descriptions.
English, eh? He said. Well, I'm in charge here. If you work well, he made the motion of upending a bottle and sucked noisily. If you don't, he gave the doorpost several vigorous kicks. To me, twisting your neck would be no more than spitting on the floor. And if there's any trouble, they'll believe me, not you. So, be careful. After this, I set to work rather hurriedly. Except for about an hour, I was at work from 7 in the morning till 9:15 at night, first at washing crockery, then at scrubbing the tables and floors of the employees' dining room, then at polishing glasses and knives, then at fetching meals, then at washing crockery again, then at fetching more meals and washing more crockery.
Polysyndetic list here because it's separated by a connective, using the word then, which does a couple of things. It gives us that sense of always progression, always moving, then this, then that. It's a coordinating conjunction, so it's always leading to the next thing. And that, so on the one hand, it shows he's always busy, and the second thing, it shows the range of tasks that he has to complete as well, these menial tasks.
It was easy work, and I got on well with it except when I went to the kitchen to fetch meals. The kitchen was like nothing I had ever seen or imagined. A stifling, low-ceilinged inferno of a cellar, red-lit from the fires, and deafening with oaths and the clanging of pots and pans.
So more hellish imagery there, literally saying inferno of a cellar. So a metaphor, a figurative description, but it does draw on that hellish imagery there from the previous page, red lit from the fires, deafening with oaths and the clanging of pots and pans. It's sensory overload, isn't it? The sounds, the heat, the temperature, the dark lighting or the lack of lighting. It's a very vivid and lurid image. In fact, it reminds one of the Hieronymus Bosch paintings you might have seen from the, I want to say, the 14th century. It might be a little bit later. Of these sort of demonic, hellish paintings of life in hell, or more accurately purgatory. But it's certainly drawing on that idea of what hell is like in the common imagination.
It was so hot that all the metalwork except the stoves had to be covered with cloth. In the middle were furnaces where 12 cooks skipped to and fro, their faces dripping sweat in spite of their white caps. Round that were counters where a mob of waiters and plongeurs clamoured with trays. Scullions, naked to the waist, were stoking the fires and scouring huge copper saucepans with sand. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry and a rage. The head cook, a fine scarlet man with big mustachios, stood in the middle booming continuously, "Ça marche, 2 œufs brouillés, ça marche, un chateaubriand pomme sautée," except when he broke off to curse at a plongeur. There were 3 counters, and the first time I went to the kitchen, I took my tray unknowingly to the wrong one. The head cook walked up to me, twisted his moustaches, and looked me up and down. Then he beckoned to the breakfast cook and pointed at me. "You see that? That is the type of plongeur they send us nowadays. Where do you come from, idiot? From Charenton, I suppose." There is a large lunatic asylum at Charenton. "From England," I said. "I might have known it. Well, mon cher Monsieur l'Anglais, may I inform you that you are the son of a whore, and now fous-moi le camp to the other counter, where you belong." I got this kind of reception every time I went to the kitchen, for I always made some mistake. I was expected to know the work and was cursed accordingly. From curiosity, I counted the number of times I was called maquereau during the day, and it was 39.
Okay, so just going back a little bit, you've got this continuation of the semantic field of hell or purgatory, even to the point that these sweating faces dripping with sweat, more bodily fluids there if you wanted to gather evidence for that. I'm not sure why you would necessarily, but it's certainly a comparison point between Thunder and this one. These half-naked people stoking the fires, huge copper saucepans. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry and a rage. A little bit of Hendiadys there as well, I suppose, with hurry and rage. Essentially saying the same thing, but said through Hendiadys. And then the shouting of the head cook, and the insults as well, of course. So it's this very hellish description, very vivid description of what life is like in these kitchens, and the insults there, and then to be called what is essentially mackerel, the fish mackerel, 39 times in one day. That numerical lexis there just gives it that sense of how, well, not only how many times he was called it, but how it stuck with him and how he counted how many times it happened to him. It's that real true account of what actually happened, and he's giving us that reliability there by telling us how many times it happened. But what a strange thing to be called, a mackerel. We find it again throughout the book, but seems to be a common insult to throw around, mackerel. We should really bring it back. Let's try it.
At 4:30, the Italian told me that I could stop working, but that it was not worth going out as we began again at 5. I went to the lavatory for a smoke. Smoking was strictly forbidden, and Boris had warned me that the lavatory was the only safe place. After that, I worked again till 9:15, when the waiter put his head into the doorway and told me to leave the rest of the crockery. To my astonishment, after calling me pig, mackerel, etc. all day, he had suddenly grown quite friendly. I realized that the curses I had met with were only a kind of probation. "That'll do, mon petit," said the waiter. "Tu n'es pas débrouillard, but you work all right. Come up and have your dinner. The hotel allows us 2 liters of wine each, and I've stolen another bottle. We'll have a fine booze." We had an excellent dinner from the leavings of the higher employees. The waiter, grown mellow, told me stories about his love affairs, and about 2 men whom he had stabbed in Italy, and about how he had dodged his military service. He was a good fellow when one got to know him. He reminded me of Benvenuto Cellini, somehow. I was tired and drenched with sweat, but I felt a new man after a day's solid food. The work did not seem difficult, and I felt that this job would suit me. It was not certain, however, that it would continue, for I had been engaged as an extra for the day only, at 25 francs. The sour-faced doorkeeper counted out the money, less 50 centimes, which he said was for insurance, a lie, I discovered afterwards.
Just a reference to that parentheses used there, again, to remind us that he's writing this as a chronology and reflecting back, and he's learnt things since this has happened. He's learnt new truths. So the parentheses here helps us to give that sense of authenticity and that realism.
Then he stepped out into the passage, made me take off my coat, and carefully prodded me all over, searching for stolen food. After this, the chef de personnel appeared and spoke to me. Like the waiter, he had grown more genial on seeing that I was willing to work. "We will give you a permanent job if you like," he said. "The head waiter says he would enjoy calling an Englishman names. Will you sign on for a month?" Here was a job at last, and I was ready to jump at it. Then I remembered the Russian restaurant, due to open in a fortnight. It seemed hardly fair to promise working a month and then leave in the middle. I said that I had other work in prospect. Could I be engaged for a fortnight? But at that the chef de personnel shrugged his shoulders and said that the hotel only engaged men by the month. Evidently, I had lost my chance of a job. Boris, by arrangement, was waiting for me in the arcade of the Rue de Rivoli. When I told him what had happened, he was furious. For the first time since I had known him, he forgot his manners and called me a fool. "Idiot! Species of idiot! What's the good of my finding you a job when you'll go and chuck it up the next moment? How could you be such a fool as to mention the other restaurant? You'd only to promise you would work for a month." It seemed more honest to say I might have to leave, I objected. "Honest? Honest? Who ever heard of a plongeur being honest, mon ami?" Suddenly he seized my lapel and spoke very earnestly. "Mon ami, you have worked here all day. You see what hotel work is like. Do you think a plongeur can afford a sense of honor?" "No, perhaps not." "Well then, go back quickly and tell the chef de personnel you are quite ready to work for a month. Say you will throw the other job over. Then, when our restaurant opens, we have only to walk out." "But what about my wages if I break my contract?" Boris banged his stick on the pavement and cried out at such stupidity. "Ask to be paid by the day, then you won't lose a sou. Do you suppose they would prosecute a plongeur for breaking his contract? A plongeur is too low to be prosecuted." I hurried back, found the chef de personnel and told him that I would work for a month, whereat he signed me on. This was my first lesson in plongeur morality. Later, I realized how foolish it had been to have any scruples, for the big hotels are quite merciless towards their employees. They engage or discharge men as the work demands, and they all sack 10% or more of their staff when the season is over. Nor have they any difficulty in replacing a man who leaves at short notice, for Paris is thronged by hotel employees out of work.
Okay, so that's that one. Not too much to say about that one, but there is a lot more to say in Chapter 11, so in fact, there's loads to say in Chapter 11, so I'll see you again for that one. Bye for now.